once upon a time, before we started this transformation, KIKO had 6 different POS systems. 6.
Don't you love that as a retail associate?
all legacy, all extremely limited in functionality, and nothing more than a POS system where a customer would come to a fixed POS, pay the money, and walk away with the product.
Hello and welcome to the Retail Alchemists. I'm Deborah Langley.
And I'm Greg Merrill. And today we have with us Kaveh Vahabi with KIKO Milano. Kaveh, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
So to kick things off, we have global listeners, folks from all over. KIKO is an Italian-based company now with a global presence. If you can start to just anchor the audience in who's KIKO Milano, talk a little bit about the business and the backstory and how you came to be what you are today.
So, first of all, thank you for the opportunity. So KIKO Milano was founded in 1997 by the Picassi family. It's an Italian cosmetic brand that's now present in over 66 countries with outstanding quality cosmetic products that's available in the 66 markets with our own e-com platform in 29 languages and multiple other channels and markets. KIKO Milano was founded by the Picassi family. Last year in August was a majority stake was acquired by an investment fund, Al Catterton. And effectively, that's the background and introduction to KIKO Milano.
Following that up, can you talk a little bit about now you? Obviously, we had a prep call for this, and I think really excited to talk about your rich history that transcends cosmetics and aviation and all that. And we'll get into some of that, but
Sure.
Maybe just for the listeners, give the background. Who is Kaveh? What has your story been?
So I'm Kaveh Vahabi, the Chief Information Officer at KIKO Milano. I've spent all of my career, more than 35 years, in IT, going through a number of engagements in very different sectors. I started my career in the financial sector, developing financial clearinghouse systems, then joined two pilots developing flight planning, aircrew management systems in the aviation sector. Spent some time in British Airways thereafter, in other sectors such as telecommunications. I was the group CIO in Switzerland, in Geneva, for a company called CETA that serves all the transport industry. Then spent some time as the head of strategic programs and CIO in Orange, France Telecom, as a consultant to a number of companies doing CIO advisory, large-scale transformation programs for UniCredit, for Fiat Chrysler, and then joined KIKO back in 2022, where the vision of transformation had begun to actually crystallize. I joined to then deliver not only the digital transformation, but the transformation across KIKO, which goes well beyond digital transformation.
So actually, Kaveh, you accomplished something extraordinary, and that was a transformation of 970 stores in 14 months. So before we get into what I can barely believe you've accomplished, can we talk a little bit about the context of unified commerce and contextual commerce? Because we all have a slightly different interpretation of those two things.
Sure.
So would love to get your point of view and how you took that thinking as you deployed this technology into this new proposition.
So Unified Commerce, which was the transformation program in KIKO, really consisted of over 35 sub-projects that went well beyond just the digital transformation. The digital transformation was an enabler for the transformation to bring about really the business enabler that then satisfied the business strategy of KIKO based on global expansion, based on actually transforming KIKO from just a cosmetic brand, a retailer, to becoming really an iconic brand. The vision in itself was really the catalyst for the transformation. Meaning, when you looked at the IT landscape back in 2022, it was very clear that the old legacy platforms was not fit for purpose and could not support the vision and the business strategy of global expansion and the other things I mentioned. The entire transformation, of course, centered around the digital transformation as an enabler, but went well beyond that. It was about the adoption of over 6,500 beauty assistants in our stores. It went across a multitude of different functions in the organizations, from operations to supply chain to exactly how we serve our customer, how we recognize our customer and then serve our customer. In the description of contextual e-commerce versus what we labeled as unified commerce, if by contextual commerce we mean serving, recognizing our customer, the behavior and the habits of our customers across multiple channels, then that is exactly what was the heart and center of what we labeled as unified commerce. So unified commerce in every aspect of the design, the customer was the North Star. It was about really moving not just to selling products, but recognizing our customer, collecting data from now a multitude of different sources, digesting and ingesting that into one of the sub-projects, which was the data lake business intelligence. And based on that customer data, behavior, preferences, then taking the customer through what we, again, another sub-project was CDP, a customer data platform, and serving our customers in a very different way to just selling products.
Sticking with the transformation, the digital transformation theme, leading up to this podcast, one of our conversations that sort of stuck with me, or one aspect, relevant to my background, leading Nike's digital transformation, where there were some similarities between our war stories, was the way we looked at it was they're fundamentally changing the economic engine of the way that the business works, right? And there's external applications that the consumer would see and experience from the brand. And then there's sort of internal tool and technology that employees are using to support the capabilities now that the business needs to compete. Pairing that with, you talked about a couple keys to winning, sort of having a vision for the transformation at onset, having a business strategy, right? And those transcend decisions on tools and technologies and what's your transformation, because that's the foundation. Everything else beyond that must serve the business strategy and the vision. You also talked about sort of the frontline retail employees that are experiencing and providing the brand experience to the customers on a daily basis. So you've kind of given three key areas. There's one that you didn't touch on that I want to highlight. And I know you're passionate about this, but if you look at the frontline employees that are touching the consumer, the employees of the company that are building the new tools and technologies and engaging with different providers and solution providers, and then you have your executives or the sponsors that where vision should sort of be born from and start from. Let's talk about executive level sponsorship. So C-suite, board level, these folks have to be bought in. You've sat on, in the C-suite for a while. Why is that important? What role does alignment within the CEO, or the C-suite play in a successful transformation? And then we're going to get into where things go wrong.
Executive sponsorship, not only here in KIKO, but in my past experiences, is paramount. is critical. There are numerous examples of failed programs, which the reason for which are multiple. Here in KIKO, the executive sponsorship started with the chief exec, our chief exec, Simone Dominici, heavily supported by our chief transformation officer, a very dear friend, Rabbi Hamdan. And then the governance of the program was really streamlined so that we can accelerate the decision making and any conflict, because there is no transformation program that just goes smoothly. I'm sure in your backgrounds, you have the scars and bruises of previous transformation programs. So the governance that many companies, every company has governance, but the governance for actually governing the delivery of such transformation programs needs to be streamlined, needs to be well managed and led. And then there needs to be the demarcation between the executive suite, who are the executive sponsors, versus the day-to-day. Many leaders of transformations perhaps use the governance, those executive sponsors, to try to perhaps resolve trivia, frankly, that should be kept within the program leadership, and the executive sponsor has a role to play, which is the continuous message of getting it done and keeping eyes on what's important. When I said that the customer in everything that we did was the North Star, it was about keeping that focus and making sure that every aspect of the design, the implementation, the softer touches of the buy-in of the store personnel and the people in-house, because this transformation didn't just touch the 1,970 stores, but there were many aspects, from financial reconciliation with new tools to operations, the supply chain, replenishment, many, many other areas that had a stake and differences in processes of what they did yesterday versus what they will do with the new technology of the future. So the executive sponsorship is critical in making sure that there's an alignment, there's the readiness to adopt change in its entirety, not just digital, but change. So the role of the C-level suite is key.
So you had that from the get-go.
We had that from the very beginning.
Okay, so
As I mentioned, I don't mean to turn this into some Oscar acceptance speech, but Simone,
Feel free.
Rabbi Hamdan, the internal IT team, the partners that I'm sure we'll talk about later, each and every one of them had a significant role in the successful delivery in this short time span of 14 months of getting it done.
Well, tying a couple of things you said there. So maybe the finish line, or one of the big milestones to prove the success, was El Catterton coming in and taking a significant investment in the company, which came across, my desk. El Catterton's a group that I follow, and I know a lot of folks there. They are a serious, sharp set of professionals that, I watch very closely what they do. So when I saw that was a huge vote of confidence, I think, for the work and the transformation that KIKO Milano had done, especially when it came to the ability to rapidly expand globally. So let's talk about, we talked a little bit about the internal transformation and the challenge there. And now, how is that able to be expressed as global store expansion? And give us some data here. How quickly were you able to open a new door? How quickly were you able to go into a new territory, a country, or a region? And what were the main factors behind that speed to open and market?
And where did you start? Which geo did you start with?
So where we started, let me go back one step. We started with a vision in January 2023, but a vision, the business strategy. In January 2023 was the first time that we actually then brought together the partnership that consisted of New Black at the heart and center of retail on iOS, an ecosystem of New Black plus their partners, consisting of Adyen as the payment provider, iPort, many others, Streamline, who do the MDM through Jamf, and much more. We then had to bring in other partners into the fold. So we used Toshiba, for example, to actually physically go out to the 900 odd stores, rip out the old, actually install the new, and many other partners. So having selected New Black, I think one of the biggest challenges for any company is having selected a particular platform. The biggest challenge thereafter is how do we then integrate New Black or any other into our existing IT landscape. And then I've already touched upon beyond the technology, there's all the other softer touches of training, adoption, etc. So we started in January 2023 with our colleagues in New Black. By July the 4th, 2023, we were going live in stores in Dubai. We used Dubai as a pilot, so to speak. And then we immediately went for our biggest markets of France and Italy in parallel. And by December 2023, we had completed all of Italy and France, over 500 stores. And at one moment in time, we were actually doing 30 stores in parallel on the same day. On the same day. So
That's going to scare a lot of people, but it's
think,
possible. It's possible.
It's possible. I think in the vision, companies need to be bold. They need to look at not an incremental approach to transformation and death by 1,000 cuts, but to be bold in addressing what they have and replacing legacy with the functionality, the richness of the functionality of a complete paradigm shift towards software as a service and all the other things that come with it. So I don't think companies should be frightened by taking on such challenges. On the contrary, these large transformation programs that span across 3, 4, 5 years invariably fail. And I'm sure there are libraryfuls of examples. And there's a good reason for that. The market changes, external factors changes, internal factors change. The executive sponsorship that we spoke about has a limited lifespan. Things move on. And then the worst thing that happens is that something happens in the market or internally, and you're bombarded with change requests, trying to follow trends, or someone in the market has done something innovative or disruptive, and you try to then catch up. And so on the contrary, I would actually encourage companies looking for transformation to take it on. And then there are some ingredients for taking on these transformations. It's about building the right partnerships. It's about high caliber individuals, partners that you bring together with a set of objectives and having really that vision, the target always in mind, and continuously fostering the spirit of partnership.
So just picking up on the functionalities that you can now deliver to the teams. 6,500 retail associates at the front line.
Mm-hmm.
What can they do now that they couldn't do before? And what's been their feedback?
Let me again go back one step. Once upon a time, before we started this transformation, KIKO had 6 different POS systems.
Oh,
6.
don't you love that as a retail associate?
all legacy, all extremely limited in functionality, and nothing more than a POS system where a customer would come to a fixed POS, pay the money, and walk away with the product. Now with the EVA platform of New Black, the beauty associates, the beauty advisors in the stores can actually engage with the customer on the shop floor, which is a completely different customer journey and sales ceremony. Through the application and some of the other functionality that we've stitched together, they can see the history of the customer, not only the buying history, but preferences, their activities across multiple channels, and really engage with the customer. And especially if the customer is part of KIKO's loyalty program, the richness of data on the customer gives them a whole different conversation with the customer. And there are many other aspects. Again, once upon a time, just checking in stock in the morning, they would have to take it to the back office with fixed scanners. And before I arrived, there were some initiatives of just replacing the fixed scanners with mobile scanners. When I say that companies should be bold and actually look at replacing the entirety of their legacy and taking the opportunity of bringing it under a transformation program, these are some of the examples that I refer to. Then we've got a multitude of other things that the business associates can do in terms of their own incentives in promotional products, etc. That again are the recommendations that they will see on the iPhones, on the iPads, to make those recommendations. So as I engage in a completely different conversation with our customers.
So driving sales even more.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And then the reaction, I have to say, is a no-brainer to replace 6 different POS systems with one on Apple, on iPads, and everything else that comes with it. It's almost second nature to a lot of the younger generation. You don't need to convince a young beauty advisor on Apple, both aesthetically and in terms of their own experience. So the reaction is nothing other than positive.
I want to jump in on this and tie a couple of things together. This show is called The Retail Alchemist, and part of what we talk about is the blend of art and science, right? Or the beauty of art and science. And if you look at the art or the magic of a partnership, right? So when you're driving a transformation, going back to sponsorship and alignment, have your CFO involved, right? They got to be a co-author in the story and feel like it's just as much their priority and strategy, because if you don't have money, you don't have budget to do the things you need to do. So this approach of both an internal group of partners and external, you talk about Jamf and iPort and New Black and Apple, this consortium of folks that have come together to provide a very holistic solution. Part of the magic in there, when I sort of first experienced it was, to your point, iOS devices. You're working on, iPhones and iPads, and it's if you take a step back, it's an empathetic way of business. What does that mean? Meeting people where they are, right? Who are the shop floor workers, right? They're typically kind of earlier in career, maybe, or not always, but these are folks that grew up using these iOS devices. They're looking for that user experience and user design. The New Black application, when I just played around with it, I said, well, this looks like Apple made it, right? But it's not. And
Absolutely.
Apple's obviously involved and they're a partner. So that to me just felt like a no-brainer. It's like hindsight's always 2020. We should have been doing it like this already and pulling ourselves out of the past. So anyway, not a question there other than to, get excited with you about the hindsight there and why it was so successful.
Absolutely, Greg. No, absolutely. As I say, for us, the training, which really consisted of creating all sorts of material, videos and documents, and the way it was adopted and absorbed by the 6,500 beauty assistants, which also takes some effort. We started just before we went live in Dubai with bringing together 200 of our champions. So in the same model of train the trainer, the 200 then went back to different regions, different countries to then do the training. But these were not professional trainers. These were beauty assistants, senior beauty assistants, who then came for a week's training and took that material back and with relative ease passed on the message, the training, to the 6,500. But the great thing is, these are young people, as you say, early in their careers, who actually use this technology every day in their day-to-day lives. You don't need to, as I say, convince people of using Apple, getting away from fixed POS, being able to engage with the customer on the shop floor as soon as they walk into the door, greet them, recognize them if they're loyalty members, which again, we used to elevate and transform even KIKO's brand from a cosmetic brand to what we want to become and have become, I would argue, as really an iconic brand with global reach and a global appeal.
Kaveh, do you think then that this has or will impact employee turnover? Is it possible that the beauty assistants are happier, they are driving more sales, thus making more? It's more rewarding to have that interaction with the customer. Do you feel, and then as you move towards being an iconic brand where everybody wants to work, do you feel or do you have evidence or data around actually people are staying longer, not looking for new jobs quite so quickly?
I'm sure that's true. I don't have numeric numbers. I can tell you that in IT, let me talk about IT. Before I joined, the attrition rate within IT was 37%. Now, in today's IT world, I think everyone knows how difficult it is to attract talent. And then the investment that one makes in bringing in talent and retaining talent. Last year and to 2023, as you can imagine, with 35 sub-projects, were really intense years. There has not been one resignation within
that's
the
amazing.
IT team.
Wow.
Despite the intensity of the last 2 years, people are pumped, motivated, and naturally so. If they're maintaining, once upon a time, the IT team was built around maintaining legacy upon legacy and doing nothing other than tickets. Receiving tickets, troubleshooting, firefighting. That team who have gone through a metamorphic change of dealing with tickets have been really the heartbeat of the partnership that I talk about with New Black, with Adyen, with Accenture, the system integrators, Streamline, Apple, and everyone else, and are now pumped, enthusiastic, part of really now, even in their own careers, even on their own CVs,
Yeah.
talking about cutting edge technology and an engagement with the business that takes IT, that in some companies is seen as a necessary evil, a cost,
Water taker.
absolutely, to being
Right.
a strategic partner with the business.
That's beautiful. Now the hard work is how do you bottle up that magic and rinse and repeat, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So let me, I'm kind of closing out, want to sort of end where we started a little bit. KIKO's an iconic brand in the cosmetic space, starting from Europe and now moving globally. The question I like to ask is from a brand strategy standpoint tied to the human emotion side of things. When a current or prospective KIKO customer experiences the brand, whether it be digital or physical in a retail store, what do you want that individual to walk away from that experience feeling?
Look, perhaps this is a question better answered by, as I introduce myself, I'm the Chief Information Officer, right? We have executives responsible for global retail, marketing, etc. But I don't think there's any question that we want our customers to engage with KIKO and have an experience that goes beyond, I say, buying a product. Lipstick, mascara, it's not really my forte, but to really walk away, as I say, having an experience that goes beyond buying. It really is about beauty. It's about their passion for their look individually, their look, and an engagement with our beauty advisor or other platforms where it's not just buying a product.
We'll take it.
Wonderful.
Kaveh Vahabi from KIKO Milano. Thank you for joining us.
Greg, Deborah, thank you.
Thank you.